Good day, my name is Gerda Brink and I will be presenting a discussion on referencing and citations. All of you are registered students at SBS and you are required to do research for your assignments or dissertations. And part of research is to be able to do the referencing correctly. So let us today look at a few of the basic skills required for referencing. You may want to know why you should reference. There are very many reasons for referencing. I'll just highlight a few. It allows you to identify your sources and your reader to locate these sources. At the same time, your reader can then consult the original source to make sure that the information that you are presenting is correct. It also connects you to a global, ever-changing source of information, which lends credibility and authority to your arguments and your research. It helps you to build on previous information, and in this way you create even more information which at a later stage could be used by somebody else. A very practical purpose is that it prevents you from committing plagiarism and academic misconduct. We know that at academic institutions, plagiarism is seen as a very, very serious form of misconduct. You show respect to your author by acknowledging copyright. And at the same time, you also indicate that you are familiar with the relevant sources of information on the topic of discussion. Let us now look at referencing styles. At Southern Business School, students are encouraged to use the Harvard referencing style. This is a style which is used all over the world at academic institutions. We sometimes think that referencing is a difficult, complicated matter. It shouldn't be. Once you understand the basics of the Harvard referencing style, you will find it quite simple and easy to use. We will not be able to discuss all the different kinds of sources that one can consult for information. So we will look at some of the more common types of sources in our discussion. We divide referencing into in-text citations and your reference list. An in-text citation is when you use information either as a direct quotation or as a paraphrase of the original material in the body of your work. It depends on how much you put in, but it could be a direct quotation, which you would then put between inverted commas with the information regarding the source added in brackets. The reference list would appear at the end of your research document, and it would give full details of all the sources that you have consulted for information. It could be a book, it could be a journal, a periodical, newspapers, government papers, etc. So there are many other sources that you can list in your reference list. Let us first look at citations, your in-text citation. There are three elements which are required when you make use of an in-text citation. The first one is the information regarding the author. That is followed by the year of publication and then the page numbers on which that information appears. If the author's name is already used in a sentence, then you should exclude it from your in-text citation. So if the author's name, for instance, forms part, as in the example, of your sentence construction, then the only parts that you would put in brackets would be the date of publication and the page number. In our example, we see Fielding maintains that feedback to written communication can be direct or indirect. Therefore, in brackets, we only have the year and the page number. If, however, an element is missing, you can't find, for instance, the date of publication of a specific source, then you would have to adapt your citation style to that. Let us look at a few types of in-text citations. The first one is your direct quotations. Now, this can be done in different ways. A direct quotation would be when you use the exact words as they are presented in the original text without changing anything. It could be a sentence or two that you quote. You will write it down exactly as it is between double quotation marks, and that would be followed by the name of the author, the year, and the page numbers in brackets. However, one can also integrate a quotation into your text, into your sentence. In other words, you don't quote the full sentence. You express your own idea, but to maybe strengthen your argument, you want to use the direct words or a phrase from the original text. As in our example, you would see Fielding's definition, because we mentioned the author's name, we only put the date and the page number in brackets of a group as, and then we have the integrated quotation. A number of people gathered together with a goal in mind. You see, that is just between single quotation marks. And then you finish your thought, the rest of your sentence. We also can use longer quotations, almost like paragraph-style quotations. These would be more or less quotations longer than 30 words. Here you would not use quotation marks, but you would indent that passage, that specific section from the rest. So the rest would be of your printing would be done against the margin, but the indented part would then be a little bit away from the margin, as you can see in the example, and there are no quotation marks in this case. The other type of in-text citation that we often use is the paraphrase. That is when you want to express information from your source, but in your own way, the way that you understand it without really changing the meaning. We have to here make sure that we follow the guidelines for paraphrasing. You have to include the complete idea and not just change a few words. That is not really paraphrasing. How can you go about that? First, you read the original information and in your mind, form your own idea of what it is. Write down what you have understood it to be and then go back to the original. See whether your interpretation corresponds with the original. If you see that there is something missing or you would like to add something, then refine your paraphrase if necessary. It is always a good idea to practice your paraphrasing before you really use it. Make sure that you are able to take original words and rewrite these in your own way. Let us look at a few examples of citations. Your sources are not always the same with regards to authors or dates of publication or the information available. So let us look at a citation where the source has only one author. If you look at our example, you will see the author's surname is mentioned, the date and page number in brackets, and then the rest of the sentence is written down. With two authors, you will use both surnames and you will use the word "and" between the two surnames. Whenever you have a source with more than two authors, you will not list 3 or 4 or 5 surnames, but you will list the first name or the name of the first author, and then you will use the Latin abbreviation et al., followed of course by your year and page number in brackets if it is a paraphrase. Of course, if it is a direct quotation, you would put that, the author's name and the abbreviation in brackets as well. What is extremely important when you do this is to take note of language issues, your grammar issue, your concord. Your verb must agree in form with your subject. So if your subject is a single author, means your verb will in the present tense be in the singular form, is, or in the past tense, was, or whatever the verb might be. If it is more than one author, so in other words, you have two authors listed, or you have one author plus the Latin abbreviation to indicate more than two authors, you will use the plural form of your verb, which, if we could just look at the verb to be, would be are or were in the past tense. You might also use information that you obtain from a corporate or institutional source. That means there isn't really an author, a person as such, responsible for this information, but for instance, a State Department, a government department, etc. If we look at our example of such a citation, you would start with that specific institution, in this case, South African Police Service, followed by your date and your page number, and then the rest of your sentence. If it happens that you use a source for which the author is unknown, you have no way of discovering who the author is. It might happen sometimes if you use an online source, that only the title of the article is available. How would you then indicate this? The place that you usually reserve for your author, the first element, would then be taken by the title of the article or the book, if it is a book. However, you have to remember that in that case, because it's a title, it has to be printed in italics. Let's move to the second part of referencing, which is your reference list. What is the purpose of a reference list? It identifies your source. It doesn't matter what source you have used, and it provides enough details so that that source can be located again and consulted if necessary. We usually put our list of references at the end of our document. Take note that if you have an appendix, that will go after your list of references. What is an appendix? It's not a list of references. It might be something like a list of words, terminology that you need to explain. Or it could be, for instance, graphs or illustrations that you want to add to support your research, but you don't want to include it in your text of your research. The appendix would go after the list of references. If you have used a source, and especially one that you have cited in your text, it is essential that the information for that specific source must appear in your list of references. For each new reference, you start on a new line. We don't indent, we just list them one underneath the other one, but each one starts on a new line. Let's look at the order of a reference list. As you may know, a reference list is supposed to be in alphabetical order. And because the first entry relates to the author, it will be done according to the surnames of the authors. However, you may have sources for which there is no author listed. And then you would have to use the title of your source, of your book or your journal or periodical. You apply the same principle, alphabetical order. It is important to note, however, that the articles a, an, and the do not count. So let's say, for instance, you have used a source with the title An Introduction to Linguistics. You would list it under I, not A, because that word does not count. As already mentioned, every reference goes onto a new line. Let's say you have consulted more than one book or source by the same author. Which one are you going to put first? How are you going to go about this? One book was published possibly in 2005, another one was published in 2011. You start with the earliest one first. So the 2005 one, you will still work with the author's surname, but then you go according to the second entry, which is the earliest one, your date of publication, 2005. If by any chance those sources have been published in the same year, then you will list it in alphabetical order according to the title. But next to the second entry, which is your date of publication, for the first one you would put the year, as in this example, 1988A, and for the second source, which was published in the same year, you will put next to your date, which is 1988, you will put the letter B to distinguish between the two. Let's look at general guidelines. When we talk about the reference list, there are certain parts of information that are essential. And we distinguish these by referring to them as areas. So the first area that we are going to identify in your reference list is area 1, which is the surname of your author. We work only with surnames and initials. Let's say the source that you have consulted was written by Peter Johnson. You're not going to write P. Johnson, comma, Peter. You're just going to write Johnson, comma, P. Don't write full names, first names, just surnames. Something else that you may have to remember here is we use the author's surname. If there's more than one author, please keep the order of your surnames in the way that they appear on the title page. You don't rearrange those in alphabetical order. So let's say, for instance, you have an author with the surname Johnson, and you have another author with the surname Barker. But Johnson is listed first on your title page, and then Barker. You will go according to that. Johnson is then the first name that you use, or surname that you use for area 1. Do not include titles when you list the author's information. Remember, it's only surname and initials. When we move to the title, I'll come back to the next area a bit later. I just want to refer to some issues around the way that we write this. When we go to the title of the source, we do not use capital letters to write the full title of a source. Sometimes if you look at the title page, it is printed in capital letters. Every single word of that title is printed in capital letters. When you record that information in your list of references, you do not do that. You start as you would with a normal sentence with a capital letter, and only proper nouns like names or place names within the title will then be written with capital letters. Academic sources very often have subtitles. So you might have your main title plus your subtitle. Your subtitle is also not written with capital letters. Lowercase, except for if there is a proper noun in your subtitle. There is, however, a difference if you use journals or periodicals. There we use maximum capitalization. For instance, if you look at the example that I've got here, the Wall Street Journal, the name of that journal, every single word starts with a capital letter. If you can just imagine looking maybe at the titles of newspapers, there you would find the same. Titles of books or periodicals or newspapers are printed in italics. We also indicate the place of publication. Sometimes if a publishing company has offices in various places, for instance in New York, London, Sydney, and all these places are listed, you only need to list the first place name that is provided, not all of them. Let us look specifically at a source. We're going to look at a book which is printed, a hard copy. So what do you enter? Area 1 is your author, or if you have more than one author, the surnames and initials. That's all. Second area is the publication date of the book, and that is the year in which the book was published. That is followed by area 3, which is your title, printed in italics. Area 4 refers to the edition. We do not always use this area. If the source that you are using is a first edition, then you don't put that information down. It's only for second and other editions that you would use that information, that you would put second edition. For the word edition, we don't write the full word, we use the abbreviation ED. The city or town where the book was published is your place of publication. Please never write a country name down here. It refers to the city or the town where the book was published. That is usually linked to the publisher or the publishing company. And your final entry then, your final area, is the publishing company or the name of the publisher. Let's have a look at a few examples here just to see in reality what should be done. If you have a book with one author, you see Tracy, comma B, make sure of punctuation. After every area you put a full stop. The year of publication, 2011, full stop. You would note that it's got a long title, a main title and a subtitle. Full engagement is the main title. First word written with capitals, rest not. Colon, if there is a subtitle, it is separated from the main title with a colon. And then the rest of the title is given. Full stop. Here we don't have an edition. We just have place of publication and the publisher. Same principle applies to all the rest of the examples, except I just want to show you that when you have more than one author, you would use the ampersand symbol to indicate and. You don't write Abbott or and, Khan D. You just use ampersand. And then the rest applies, the same applies. You would see with the second example, there is an edition listed. In this case, the source that was used is the 4th edition. 3 or more authors. Remember when we did the citations? When we had more than 2 authors, we used the Latin abbreviation et al. With list of reference, we don't. We list all the authors. It does not matter how many authors there are. Between the first 2, you would put a comma, and then before you use the name of the last author, you will use your ampersand. If a book does not have an author, or you're not able to determine who the author is, of course you will start with your title. Remember when we spoke about how you write these entries? A title is printed in italics. So it will be in the first area, but it will be printed in italics, followed by the rest of the areas. Here you would have fewer areas because you would have the title, followed by the year of publication. Now you don't have the title again because it's already mentioned. The edition, the publishing place of publication, and the publisher. An edited book. Sometimes you find a book that has been written by several authors, and at one point in time, maybe the author is no longer alive, but the book is still valid, the information is still important, but it needs to be updated. So sometimes the publisher would ask somebody to edit the book. An edited edition of a book means there were changes made to the original book. Just to clarify something, a reprint is not a new edition. A reprint just means the book has been printed again. If you find information related to a reprint, then don't regard that as an edition. With an edited book, where the author is no longer mentioned, but the editor is the person responsible for that new edition, you will use the same format with your author surname, initials, but then in brackets you would put the ED, which would indicate that this person was not the original author, but he edited the book and changed some information. We also sometimes use information published by other institutions or organizations. For instance, a government white paper. What would you then list under author? That specific institution's name. For instance, in our example, Department of Community Services and Health, once again, you follow the same procedure. 1990, the title of that document, and any other related information. There might not be an edition listed. There might sometimes not even be a publisher listed. But usually the department, especially government departments, would then do their own publishing, and they would then be listed as the publisher. Because we live in the age of technology, most of your research is done online. Some of you still use the printed books, the hard copies, because there's useful information and not all of these sources are available online. Let's look at what happens if you consult a source, a book specifically, that is available online. Once again, we have the same areas. However, there is going to be a difference here. So you start with your area 1, your information regarding your author, publication date of that specific book, the title of the book still printed in italics. Now, that's the first change that we have. You have to indicate what format. For a printed book, you don't need to indicate the format. But if it is an online source, you have to indicate that it is online. You could also indicate that it's in a PDF format or whatever other format is available. If the place of publication is available, you would put that down. We often don't find that when we have online sources or even a publisher. But if it is available, you would put that in. That is followed by the URL or the web address of the source. And then in square brackets, you put the date on which you access that information. It's very important that we always include the date when we consult online sources. Information in online sources changes rapidly and constantly. And it is the author's right to go in and change information. So if you make a certain statement based on information that you found in an online source, and it has changed afterwards, and maybe what you have said is no longer reliable, then you have to indicate when you found that information. Let us have a look at the example here. You will have your author, followed by the year, the title of your book, and then in square brackets you indicate it is available online, publisher, publishing company, and then you will have your URL. And in square brackets, you have the date on which it was accessed. Journal and magazine articles in printed format, hard copies. Once again, we have the same areas, but you will obviously understand that there will be certain things that won't be the same. So we start in the same way with our information related to the author, the surname and initials, the year when the journal was published. Don't put a date down, because very often you would use information on the outside cover of a journal or a periodical, where a full date would be given. Just put down the year. Then, because you're not using all the articles which were published in that specific journal or periodical, you have to put down the title of the article. The title of the article is not printed in italics because it does not refer to a complete publication. Only the title of the journal or the magazine or the periodical, which follows the title of the article, will be printed in italics. That is followed by the volume number of the journal. If that is not available, you leave it out. If there is an issue number, it follows the volume number. If a month is available, it will follow on your issue number. And then you will indicate the page numbers on which this article is available. Let us have a look at the example. Rabbi J, your author, year of publication. Then you see the title of the article is not printed in italics. Drinking among college students. Where did he find this information? In the Journal of Alcohol and Drug Education. What is the volume number? 40. In round brackets, the issue number followed by the month and then the page numbers on which this article appear in this journal. When we look at journal and magazine articles, which are available online, and these, there are many, many of them. So we very often get this information online. Still the same procedure as for any other journal article. You have your surname and initials of your author, the year when the journal was published, the title of the article, not printed in italics, then the title of your journal, magazine or periodical, which is printed in italics, followed by, in square brackets, the word online. Then the URL is provided, the date on which the article was accessed in square brackets. And once again, the reason for that is it's very important so that the lecturer or whoever reads the information that you make available knows when you accessed this information in case there had been a change in the original information. So we look at the example here. You have your author, year of publication, the title of the article, The Great American Pension Fund Robbery, which was published in Business Week, printed in italics, online in square brackets, URL, and the date on which it was accessed. Newspaper articles is the way that we reference these. We follow the same procedure, but here and there, we have to enter different information. So you would have the information regarding the reporter in your place, your first area, your author's information. Take note that year of publication goes in the second area, nothing else, not the date on which the the newspaper appeared. Followed by the title of that specific article, the title of the newspaper in italics. And here, remember, we can write every single word of that title of the newspaper with a capital letter, because very often that is how it's presented. That is followed by the page number on which the article appeared. If it appeared on more than one page, you will provide all the page numbers. That is then followed by the day and month of that specific publication. Let's look at the example. You have the author's information, that would most likely be your reporter, followed by the year, the title of the article, where was it published, in which newspaper, Sydney Morning Herald. You see, every single word of that title is printed with a capital letter in italics. That is followed by page number. Don't use the abbreviation P to indicate page number. Just put a comma after your newspaper title, put in the page number, and that is followed then by the specific day and month on which that article appeared in that newspaper. Online newspaper articles, same procedure. Author, which is your reporter, year of publication, etc. It's the title of the electronic newspaper is printed in italics. Once again, you wouldn't have a page number here. Remember, with a printed newspaper, we had a specific page number that we could refer to, but for the online newspaper, you don't necessarily have pages, so it's immediately then followed the title by the day and month of the newspaper. Obviously, you would have to provide the URL, the date on which you accessed that in square brackets. Example, Maslin J., the reporter, 2015, public shaming in the Twitter age, is published in the Australian Financial Review. On which date? 30 March. Don't repeat the year. Remember, you've already provided the year in your second area. The URL, and then the date on which you accessed this specific information. Other examples of entries may be from websites, etc. Let's look at the first one. Here we have an organization, the Tourism Association of South Africa, published. They have a website specifically. It's their website, so they are regarded as the author, followed by the year in which this information was published. What is the title of this publication? It's available online, URL, and when you access that. The same applies to a web page, a website or a web page. Same procedure that you follow. Of course, there are many, many other types of sources. You can use dissertations, you can use dictionaries, you can use conference papers, study guides, etc. SBS has made available the SBS Harvard referencing document, which all registered students can use, and it is available to all of you. So for any other source, you can really just go there, look up the specific type of source that you have used to see how it differs from the other sources, where the difference is. What you have to remember when you reference is consistency. Don't change your method halfway through. If there is a mistake in your reference list, let's say you haven't done something according to specifically how the Harvard style prescribes, but you are consistent in the way in which you reference, it creates a better impression. Don't use a different print for your titles from one source to the other one. If your title, and I advise you to use italics because it stands out, if your title is always printed in italics, you use that same print for all titles. Don't bold print the title of another source. So consistency is very, very important. Because a lot of your research is done on the internet, it is important to know how to use this source or this source of information, because there's such a lot of information available. And people just go onto online, they use a search engine, and they discover information, and they just think that I can use it because it is available. Remember, you have to reference this. So lots of information is available on the internet, but not all that information is always accurate. If you find information related to a specific topic, maybe try and find another source, an online source, a few online sources with similar information, just to verify that the information that you have used or that you are intending to use is correct. And try and locate the original source of that information. Make sure that the source that you are using is reliable, the site that you are using. A good guideline here would be to use maybe the websites or web pages of academic institutions, renowned academic institutions, because anybody can put information on a web page or a website, and you do not know whether that is always reliable. Does this site or this source quote additional sources? Are there in-text citations in the information on that specific web page that you are using? That would help you. Maybe you can do a search for that information or for that specific source then. Do you regard the author's written information as objective information or subjective information? Also look at who the author is. Validate the author by trying to find out more about your author or the organization that this author presents. For instance, is it a creditable organization? Is it a place that you can rely on because of the information that they provide? Then when you use your web browser, learn how to manage several pages at one time. Open new tabs so that you have more than one page open and that you can compare information. It's very difficult if you have to jump from one and then close a page and go to another page. And then a last tip that I want to give you here is to make use of bookmarks. While you are busy with your research or with the finalization of your document or the planning of your research or your assignment, use bookmarks. Open a file. List all the URLs in that file. Make a list of all the topics and where you found information about those topics. List the information, because once you go back, you might find that that website is no longer in existence. That could be an indication that it is not really a very reliable source, but it could be for a different reason. Let us have a look at a practical example. Where do you find information for your entry in your reference list for a specific source? You have used this book, Academic Literacy, and you have used information from this book in your assignment. Do not use the cover page for information. Go to your title page. There you find the complete information that you need. So the first area relates to the author. You can see that the author is listed as Albert Weideman. Remember, you only write surname, comma, and initial. Then we need to find the year. But you find no year of publication on this page. So we have to quickly check the edition because different editions are published in different years. So we see this is a second edition. So you turn your page and you go to the back of your title page. And there you would see a whole list of editions and dates. Find the one specific to this publication. The second edition was published in 2007. Remember, we don't work with impressions or reprints. All that information related to impressions or reprints do not count. It's editions. So the second edition was published in 2007. Therefore, in Area 2, you will record that information. So let's just go back to our title page. We have a main title, Academic Literacy. You print that in italics. You use a colon after the word literacy. And although this phrase, prepare to learn, is printed in caps, in capital letters here, after the colon, you print it in small letters, lowercase, no capital letters. That is your third area. That is followed by the edition. That is area 4. Don't write the word out. Use the number, the ordinal number. So you print a 2 with the abbreviation ND second and the abbreviated form of edition, which is ED. So that takes care of area 4. We see that the publisher is mentioned on the title page. But remember, you have to have the place of publication as well. That you will find on the back of your title page. So you have to look for a town or a city name. You would see that it gives you the information published by Van Skyk Publishers, and then there's a specific address. Do not use the address, just the town or the city name. So the area 5 consists of the word Pretoria, followed by a colon, and then Van Skyk Publishers. And that is how you record the information related to the source in your reference list, with the different entries, the 5 different areas that form part of your entry for the source. All of you are required to make use of electronic journals, online sources. And Southern Business School has granted you access to the online journal catalog. And through this catalog, you have access to various sources. For instance, you can access Sabinet or EBSCO. You can also access other sources like dictionaries and other resources available on this catalog. The instructions related to this catalog is available in your study guide, so make use of this. Let us move to one of the online journals that we use very often in our research for assignments, the EBSCO journal catalog. You are required to enter your user ID, student SBS, and that is exactly the same as your password, which is also student SBS. And then you log in. When you get to this page, you have to know either the link, the title of the article, the author of the article, the database. I'm going to choose a different database here just to show you what we can do. I'm going to just go to the Business Source Premier database and enter that. Now the article title is usually available to you in the instruction for your assignment. So I'm going to type in an article title here, and we'll see whether we can find that specific article. Let's do a search and see whether we can find that article. So we go down, it's not available here. See if we can find it. There it is, A Way Without Words. There are two. This one is the one that I want to look at. So we click on that, and then we find the relevant information. You would see that the author is listed. If you look there, usually the author is provided in the name of the author is provided in the information related to that article. So when you have to reference this specific information in your reference list, you will start with McCullum, K, because that's his initial. That is followed by, you would see that it is published in Office Pro, May 2009. So you will then add 2009 in your second area. That is followed by the title of your article, which is not printed in italics. You would see that the title of this article is printed, every word is printed with caps. You will not do it that way. Just the first A will be a capital letter. After that, you put a full stop, then you would have your title of your source. Office Pro printed in italics, just as it is provided here. That is then followed by the word online in square brackets, followed by the volume number 69, round brackets 4 for the issue, colon 28, just 28, not page 28. That is where you find this information. Then you would also include the URL, and you will also indicate the date on which it was accessed. When you get to this article, you will see that there is just an abstract provided. And many of you have sent in inquiries about the fact that you could not find the full article. If you look at the side of this screen, you would see that the article is available as HTML as a full text, a PDF as a full text. If you click on PDF, the article will open and you can download it so that it is available for you. And then you will use this link here as your URL. So that is really how you go about getting to this information and how you also list that information in your reference list. Finally, I would just like to wish you all well in your research and good luck with your referencing. It's important, it's not difficult. Don't put up a barrier against referencing, and you will eventually find that it comes easy. Thank you.